Hey guys, Kelly of EVO Cosplay here, and welcome back to the channel. I've got another tutorial for you guys today. Today I'm going to show you how to do arrow smocking. This technique is more commonly associated with Daenerys from Game of Thrones. This is the fabric manipulation technique to create what look like dragon scales on many of her costumes. So let's get right into the tutorial. So I'm going to start off by showing you guys what a finished piece looks like. This is for my Ysera costume. So what you're going to need to do this is, obviously, you're going to need your fabric that you want to smock, a quilting ruler, some thread, some wax, a needle, of course, and some kind of marking instrument. For this, I'm using a pen. So the first thing you're going to want to do is mark off a grid on your fabric. For this, I'm using a 1/2 inch grid. I've also gone ahead and marked this grid off on some paper so I can show you guys exactly how you're going to stitch visually first. So you're going to want to start off on your center line, which is going to be 3 dots over from the edge. Your first stitch is going to be in the second dot in this line. Then you're going to go over 2 dots for another stitch, down and over 1, the middle, and another stitch, and then we go back to the initial stitch to create the triangle that is necessary for the fabric manipulation. From here, you're going to move up to the next dot in that center line. We'll go over the other direction this time, 2 dots, then back down 1 and over into the center, and back up to our initial dot. And that will create your next triangle. You're going to repeat this all the way down that center line that you've got. So the first thing I'm going to do is run the thread through the wax. The wax is going to help to make sure that the thread glides through the fabric fairly easily and doesn't get tangled while you work. After that, you're going to need to tie off the end of your thread. I usually do it about 3 times to make sure it's nice and secure. And there we have it. Now on the fabric you're using, it's going to be beneficial to mark off that center line that I talked about. So you're going to go over 3 dots and we're going to mark a line down the middle. From there, you're going to go over 4 additional dots to mark off for the next row of smocking. We're going to start on that first center line, 1 dot up, just like I showed you on the paper. We're going to do a very tiny stitch through the fabric, just enough to catch it. You don't want to make it too large or you might be able to see it when you're done. From there, we're going to go over to the side again and we'll do our next tiny stitch. This is over 2 dots from the first one. Then we're going to go back over 1 and down. And from there, back to the initial stitch to complete our triangle shape. After you've done this, you want to make sure that you hold on to the end of the thread as you go ahead and pull all those pieces together to create your arrow smock. After you've done this, you're going to want to take your needle and you're going to want to stitch through those edges that you just pulled together of fabric. This will help lock it into place and make sure it doesn't come undone. And there's your first one. Doesn't look like much now, but it will. Now we're going to completely follow what we did on the paper. So we're going to go up to the next dot on that center line. Again, we're going to do a tiny stitch through it. Then we'll go over 2 dots in the opposite direction. Again, stitch. Then we'll go back down and over to create that point of the triangle. Obviously, it's very vital that you make sure you're stitching through the right places when you do this. From there, we go back to the center line where we had our initial stitch. Something distracted me there. I don't know what it was. Then you're going to make sure that you hold on to that thread that's between those two stitches on your center line before you pull. This will make sure that you don't pull it completely together. That will mess up your look on the other side. Then you're going to catch those two edges again with the thread and needle and pull to lock it into place. And now it's time to repeat. So we go to that next dot on that center line that we have marked. Stitch through it. Then we go over to like our initial triangle we made. Then down and over one to create the point. And then back through the initial stitch. Holding on to that thread again, and we'll go ahead and pull it all together. Let's go ahead and speed this up, and we'll get through that first row of smocking. Once you've gotten to the end of where you want your smocking to be, you're going to need to tie it off. The way I do this is by repeating the final step of the triangle by stitching through those two edges. But I don't pull all the way through. I bring the thread through the loop that I have there to create a little knot. I do this about 3 times to lock everything into place. And there you have it. There's your first row. Yay! Now we're going to move on to the next one. Remember, we marked over the next center line 4 dots from the initial one that we made. You're going to do the same exact thing that you just did on that first row of smocking. We're going to go start the second dot up, and we're going to create that triangle shape just like we did before. It's going to be a little more difficult to see some of the dots as you go through this process, especially the more that you smock the fabric. So you want to make sure that when you mark your initial grid, you do it clearly on the back of the fabric with something that you can see easily. But it's also important to make sure that the marking does not transfer through to the other side of the fabric. I found that a regular ink pen actually works really well for this. And because it's on the back side of the fabric, you're never going to see it. And so removal is not necessary at the end of it all. And I'm going to reiterate again, you want to make sure that you're stitching through the correct dot, because if you don't, it's not going to look right at the end. Let's speed it up and finish up this row too. And there we have it. Just about done. Once we tie it off. And that's the completed piece. And of course, again, I'll show you guys what a larger one looks like. Now, in order to create the same look as Daenerys in Game of Thrones, most of her costumes have her scales pressed. So you're going to want to take your iron and press in the direction of the scale. So start at the large end and go and press towards the tip. Now the fabric that I used for this test doesn't press the greatest. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you use a fabric for this that's gonna get nice, clean, crisp presses with an iron. And we're all done. Yay! You've done it! Alright guys, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this helps you out if you have decided to create your own Daenerys costume, or if you want to use this technique as decoration on something you're currently working on. I really have enjoyed smocking, and there are different types of fabric manipulation and smocking patterns out there, so if you enjoy this, I encourage you to look up some others. If you guys have any questions, please put those in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future tutorial videos. Be sure to check me out over on Patreon. Patrons get early access to all tutorial videos and they get to vote on what ones are upcoming. See you guys next time. Bye!